All right, the lesson this week: politics is a game that turns players into monsters and monsters into players. When Diane Feinstein got Dr. Ford's allegation, she was a player. But rather than hold a private meeting about these allegations, which would have protected the families and lives of both Kavanaugh and Ford, Feinstein sat on it until it could only become a show trial, one held in honor of Merrick Garland. And here's the key part: it normalized collateral damage. You know what collateral damage is? You drop a bomb and innocent people die. The mob in that room knew their bomb would destroy reputations, humiliate a family, scar two kids. But they did the math. Politically, collateral damage was worth it. So they unleashed the public accusations, leaking to accomplices, something Feinstein couldn't quite deny with conviction, because in the end, the Ford letter went from Feinstein to the media. Feinstein doesn't know how this happened. How could it? She investigated right there on camera.
Can you tell us that your staff did not leak it?
Oh, I don't believe my staff would leak it. I have not asked that question directly, but I do not believe
they would. Do you know that?
Would.
I mean, how in the world could that get in the hands of the press?
The answer is no. The staff
have you asked your staff or other staff members on the Judiciary Committee?
Pardon me? Well, Jennifer reminds me I've asked her before about it, and that's true.
Well, somebody leaked it if it wasn't you.
Well, it was, I'm telling you, it was not. I did not.
Oh, embarrassing. Call it a mystery, call it transubstantiation, but for sure it was a miracle, one that created a hell no one would want to endure. Happily for Feinstein and friends, the target still entered the Coliseum. This is way bigger than he said, she said. This is we said. Due process replaced by political vigilantes. Presumption of innocence be damned. Yesterday we saw a mob seeking payback, tribalism, trumping institutions and common sense. A female victim gets used. A wife, mother, and daughter are wounded, perhaps permanently. America gets sick, while Feinstein holds a pitchfork and says, "Who, me?"
Good.
You know why you know this was so manufactured is where Alyssa Milano was sitting I think directly over Kavanaugh's shoulder. She was the guest of Feinstein. And she was smiling and texting, and it's like, why was she there? That was orchestrated. This was a show trial.
Yep. A show trial that had the intended effect.
Yes.
Look where we are today.
Mm-hmm.
You had a situation where when Kavanaugh came back off the ropes, someone talked to him at lunchtime after Dr. Ford's testimony and said, "Listen, dude, you want this job? You get out there and you fight for this job." Yeah. He got up, using that boxing analogy. He went back out there and he swung and he did it. He had the momentum. He got back on top. He was cruising toward that nomination. Then Jeff Flake happened. Right. And I'm a University of Arizona Bear Down graduate.
Me too.
Jeff Flake happened. Oh, yeah, Bear Down. So Jeff Flake happened. And for anyone, as a former activist attorney myself, if you think that those noisy demonstrators have no impact other than making a nuisance of themselves, you should talk to the two ladies who confronted Jeff Flake in that elevator. They made history. They made him. He's not. It doesn't seem like the strongest rod in the shed anyway. He collapsed. He collapsed, and then they had no choice. They had no choice.
Lindsey Graham says the leak came from Feinstein. Shouldn't there be an investigation?
Well, I think the prosecutor yesterday did a really nice job establishing the chain of custody for this letter. She said it's either Ford personally, and she gave it to the Congresswoman, Democrat, and then it went to Feinstein. Those are the only three people that had custody of it. The leak must have come from them. And if you look at this woman, Ford, yesterday, incredibly riveting, very compelling, obviously believable personally, but she's incredibly naive. She's an academic. She's, she seemed a little out of it at times, and she has been manipulated by the Senate Democrats in the Judiciary Committee and by her lawyers. And the prosecutor did an excellent job explaining that, and here's how. The whole flying thing, afraid of flying, that was manufactured. They showed that she goes to Hawaii. She goes all over the country. She had just flown back and forth across the East and West Coast, so that was a lie. It was also established that she never even heard the invitation to come interview her on the West Coast. Her lawyers were keeping that from her.
Now, isn't that a lie? I mean, isn't that against Isn't
the truth against the truth?
Well, no, and couldn't the lawyers be in trouble for withholding?
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to tell your client everything. Geraldo would know more, but it seemed like she had no idea that offer was proffered. And then the polygraph was very bizarre that they did it on the same day she had gone to her mother's funeral.
But then she couldn't
they won't release any of the audio and the video from the polygraph. And the sex crimes prosecutor, again, made a great point at the very end in closing and said, this is not how you treat a true victim of sexual assault. You give her a forensic interview, and you don't polygraph her up and lawyer her up and then parade her out on national television. These people, like you said in the monologue, liked watching Ford being tortured, liked watching Kavanaugh being tortured. It was sadistic what they did to these two
It was
people.
all of those things, but it was also premeditated.
Yeah.
You don't have to be guessing around. The Democrats, I come back to this point. The Democrats, which represent the pro-choice forces in this country, they were holding the weak hand. The pro-life forces, represented by the Republicans, holding the stronger hand. The Democrats desperate. What do? Aha, they get the golden ticket. The golden ticket in the form of the Dr. Ford accusations. How are we going to use this to the best effect? We're going to hold it. We're going to hold it. We're going to look like we're losing. Then guess what on the left? There. What about this?
Grassley had said when this first came up, no, we're holding the vote on Monday. We're not extending it to Thursday for a hearing. That's it. We're not playing games. If he had done that, it would have avoided this delay, and it would not have jeopardized this vote. Do you think he could have played that way, or do you think he would have suffered?
I think it would have.
You think he would have suffered?
Republicans looks like they're not willing to hear from women about sexual assault, which is a playbook that Democrats have been using for decades. They've been using it in political campaigns, midterm, presidential, for years. That would have not been optically a good look. Now, the consequences of that are where we are today.
Right.
But there's one thing
now.
I do want to say about Diane Feinstein dropping this bomb into the middle of the committee. Her staff and Senator Grassley's staff used to actually have a pretty good relationship. They used to have a really professional working relationship on very important big issues like protecting whistleblowers, national security, oversight of government agencies, and she has completely destroyed any kind of relationship that they had in the past as the left continues to lecture the right about civility and coming together and Washington working to make sure we're bettering the country. She destroyed that relationship. It was a good one, and she has a lot of explaining to do. And as Greg mentioned, there should be an investigation.
Isn't Feinstein doing this because she's in trouble too with the left in California?
Maybe, but I think that this is big. You have to go back to this. I was a young lawyer when Roe v. Wade was argued and passed. This was a sea change. This was an incredibly profound, women in the streets, the first lap of the women's movement was happening, unfolding. The nation was beginning to fracture along these lines. This is the generation later. The pro-life forces finally had an opportunity to sway things back their way. A generation later, and this is the fight to the finish. This is any means necessary.
But if you can acknowledge that, if you can say this is political, this is about abortion, then can't you see that no matter how many investigations you do, there's always going to be something else, always something else.
I agree.
So you can't just keep calling for investigations of uncorroborated claims because this is political. And Kavanaugh said it was political, which they hate him for.
Yeah, they said it was revenge for the Hillary loss.
Right. He was willing to come out and say this is about politics.
Isn't this Merrick Garland? Isn't Merrick Garland's justification enough?
Accused of gang
and his
raping
whole
women at a high
reputation
school
was
party.
He didn't even get a hearing. He didn't even get a chance to get accused of anything.
These types of salacious claims.
They played dirty with Merrick Garland. Now what goes around?
I don't think that you could actually predict or say that with this Supreme Court nomination, anything happens to Roe v. Wade. I think that's a game in itself. I don't think that it's under threat, Geraldo.
I do. I'll tell you very easily, very quickly. Roe v. Wade said there's a competing interest, mother and unborn child. At some point, the child becomes viable. When the child can live outside the mother, the child now has the rights of a human. That date keeps getting pushed back 6 months, 5 months, 4 months into the pregnancy.
Now
you can,
the majority
that's
of women
where the
actually
fight will
support
be.
that.
They're going to the technology. They'll use technology to
sonograms showing that a baby's a real thing.
The message we're giving is that you can derail a nomination if you don't like the policy, and it's being allowed. It's being tolerated right now.